These are the lecture notes on Protists. Okay, so protists for the most part are still microorganisms. However, their cells are not prokaryotic. So in the last topic, when we studied prokaryotes, those were archaea and bacteria, the domains archaea and bacteria, and the prokaryotic cells did not have a nucleus. They were very small, and they were unicellular. The organisms were unicellular. But in the protists, we have mostly unicellular organisms. All of them have eukaryotic cells. And some of them are multicellular. Some are unicellular and some are multicellular. So basically what we do in the eukaryotic organisms is that protists are the kingdom of organisms that can't be classified as an animal, a plant, or a fungi. Let me try to see if I can get this pen to work. So they are eukaryotic cells. There we go. All right, and they cannot be classified into the kingdoms animal, plant, or fungi. Okay, so the cell structure of protists mostly are microscopic and unicellular, but there are some multicellular forms because the algae are actually in the kingdom Protista. And some algae are unicellular, but some are multicellular. Okay, so basically the rest of the slide just talks about how diverse the kingdom Protista is, because basically you're going to end up with organisms that are plant-like, animal-like, or fungus-like. So as far as protection of the cells, they may have a plasma membrane that is similar to an animal. They may have a plasma membrane that is similar to a plant and a cell wall that is similar to a plant. Others can have glassy shells, or they can be wound with pellicles, and pellicles are like a coat of armor. So we will see different types of outer protection in the protozoans. Now, these top three pictures A, B, and C are the protozoans that we look at in lab most commonly in Bio 112. We look at them because they are good examples of three different classifications of protozoans. Basically, when we classify protozoans, we classify them based on how they obtain food and how they move. So it's food and movement. In picture A, you see a paramecium, which is covered with cilia. I've always thought that a paramecium kind of looked like a slipper, like a bedroom slipper or a ballet slipper. This would be where the arch of your foot is. But you can tell it's eukaryotic because you can see the nucleus inside, and you can see various membrane-bound organelles. So Paramecium would be unicellular, but much larger than a bacterium. A bacterium might be this size. A typical bacterium might be this size in comparison to a Paramecium. Okay, and then we have the amoeba, which changes shape. And as it changes shape, it forms these projections called pseudopods, fake feet, false feet. And it moves by kind of gliding along the surface. We call this amoeboid movement. And then the euglena contain a flagellum, so they're able to swim. And as far as food, the Paramecium and the Amoeba are heterotrophs. The Euglena is actually a mixotroph. It can ingest food, but also you can see these chloroplasts here. It can also make its own food. All right, as far as the metabolism, protists exhibit many forms of nutrition. They're not going to be quite as diverse with their nutrition as the bacteria, but they can be aerobic. They can also be anaerobic, meaning that if they're aerobic, they need oxygen to live, and if they're anaerobic, they do not need oxygen to live. There are protists that carry out photosynthesis and make their own food, convert carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into carbohydrates. And since they carry out photosynthesis, they are called photoautotrophs, meaning their energy comes from sunlight, and autotroph means they make their own food from carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So they are going to all carry or have chloroplast. Chloroplast will be one of their organelles. Then we have mixotrophs like the Euglena, which are going to carry out photosynthesis. So they're photoautotrophic when sunlight is available, but they're heterotrophic when sunlight is not available. Then we have just simply heterotrophic protozoans, and they have to consume their food in various ways, sometimes by phagocytosis or engulfing the food, and sometimes it is by they actually have an opening similar to a mouth. There are protists called saprobes. They're going to absorb nutrients from dead organisms, similar to fungi. Now, this is an illustration of an amoeba. You can see the pseudopods. Here's one, here's another. You can see the pseudopods, and what you can see happening with this amoeba is a process called phagocytosis. The amoeba is wrapping its pseudopods around the food particle here and here. So the pseudopods, now we find that they have two uses. They can be used for movement, and they can also be used to engulf food by the process of phagocytosis. The food particle will move into the amoeba. A lysosome containing digestive enzymes will fuse with the food vacuole, and then you will have the enzymes will combine with the food vacuole and break it down, and then the waste will leave by exocytosis. Okay, most protozoans and algae undergo some form of asexual reproduction, possibly binary fission, like the bacteria. And then some can reproduce by budding. They produce tiny buds that eventually pinch off and become a parent. And then sometimes they undergo multiple fission, which instead of dividing into two, they divide into many copies at the same time. However, we have something new with the protist. Protists they're also capable of sexual reproduction, meaning that they have one parent contributes half their chromosomes, the other parent contributes half their chromosomes, and the offspring has half of the chromosomes from each parent. So sexual reproduction in protists is going to involve meiosis. It's also going to involve fertilization. let's see. Sexual reproduction is advantageous because it gives variety to the offspring. So if there is a disease, or if there's something in the environment that is causing a lot of the protozoans to die, it's more advantageous to have a variation in genes, because maybe there's some protist that will have a combination of genes that will help them to survive. So a lot of times in the protist, sexual reproduction is associated with cysts that will allow the protozoan to resist the harmful environment and remain dormant for a while. So the cysts are a protective, resting, or dormant stage. This is similar, I guess you could say, to endospores in the bacteria. The cysts can be particularly resistant to temperatures, high or low temperatures, drying out or desiccation, or even low pH or acidic conditions. And so the cysts allow them to wait out these unfavorable conditions, and then they will become active when conditions are better for growth and reproduction. Protists, almost all of them exist in the water. That can be freshwater, marine, damp soil, and even some of them can even exist in snow. Then there are protists that are parasites. We know malaria, for example. And malaria is caused by a protozoan called Plasmodium. And then we also have saprobes, and that means that they live on the nutrients released by dead organisms, similar to fungi. Now, here is how we classify, and this is probably the most difficult part of this chapter. Let's talk about this, and then we'll end this section and move on to the next one. Okay, so the excavata. So these are called supergroups, and the excavata is the first supergroup, but they're called supergroups because sometimes they will contain other organisms besides the protozoans. So basically what you have is a common eukaryotic ancestor. So there's an ancestor that's common to all the eukaryotes, the protist, the animals, the fungi, and the plants. So you're going to have fungi, animals, and plants in some of these supergroups. For example, the Archaeoplastida consist of red algae, 2 types of green algae, and the land plants. The land plants are not protists, they're plants, but they are also in the supergroup Archaeoplastida. Then we have the supergroup Episthocanta, which contains fungi and animals, as well as, those are not protists, but the supergroup Episthocanta also contains choanoflagellates and nucleariids. And the rest of them only contain members of the kingdom Protist. So we have the Amoebozoa, which consist of the slime molds, the gymnamoebas, and the entamoebas. We have the Rosaria, which consist of the cercozoans, the forams, and the radiolarians. We have the Chroma violata, which is a very large group that's also broken down into 2 subgroups, the alveolates and the straminopiles. And then we have the excavata, which includes the diplomonads, the parabasalids, and the euglenozoans. So we will talk about and learn about the protists by classifying them into these groups and learning about the individual groups one at a time.